This episode is brought to you by Crystal Lake Entertainment Ad Space. Advertise on the Coffee Fueled Stories podcast, the ideal platform for promoting your book release or sale. Your ad, 30 or 60 seconds long, will be featured at both the start and end of an episode, reaching a dedicated audience of horror and dark fiction readers. This is a perfect opportunity to increase visibility and connect with your target audience. See link in the show notes for details, or go to crystallakepub.com/shop. Crystal Lake Entertainment presents Coffee Fueled Stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your pocket DJ and host of Coffee Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's special guests are Ryan C. Thomas and Anthony Trevino. Hello, welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Howdy.
Hey, all right, so we are going to talk about your new book that just came out. And it is called PsychoActive. And the story specifically that you both worked on is called Love is a Monstrous Death.
Yes.
And that is just like, let's before we go into all of that, goodness gracious, let the listeners know a little bit about you, Ryan. What do you do? And same with you, Anthony. We'll just start with some brief introductions.
Sure. Mostly these days, I'm a stay-at-home dad. You will probably hear my children fighting in the background in about 30 seconds. When I'm not doing that, I try to get some writing done. I've written several novels, including The Summer I Died, the Hissers trilogy, which Anthony helped me out with. I think I have maybe about 14 novels out at this point. And then when I'm not doing that, I play guitar in a dad band around here at the bars, and we just kind of do some Elvis covers and stuff like that. And that's my life.
Right on. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, so like I was saying before we got started, I have a pretty boring office job that pays the bills and allows me to do all the fun things that I enjoy doing, whether it be taking care of my cat, hanging out with Ryan, playing music, writing sketch comedy, working on short films, all the different kinds of things. I think I have like creative ADHD. I can't do just like one thing, so I'm kind of all over the place. I met Ryan. God, Ryan, how long ago did we meet? 2010?
Yeah. I don't think I had kids yet, right?
No.
Yeah, probably
No.
close, somewhere between 12 and 15 years ago.
Yeah, and we've been kind of growing this friendship ever since. And then I started publishing in 2015 when my first novella came out through Eraserhead Press called King Space Void. And then from there, I've just kind of mostly published short stories. I've put out a few comics with my close friend Kai Martin, who's a fantastic local San Diego artist. And yeah, like I said, I'm just kind of all over the place.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and start with music, because you had mentioned, Ryan, that you're in a band, a dad band. I love that. So we're definitely going to tap into the dad band thing.
Okay.
Anthony, you play music as well. Are you in the dad band, even though you're not a dad?
I am not in the dad band. No. Ryan and I very briefly would jam every once in a while. Like, I think we've only done it like 2 or 3 times. So
Anthony's that type of guitarist that comes over and can like shred a Metallica solo, but doesn't know a single note of what he's playing. And that makes me it makes me a little crazy, because I'll be like, yeah, that's good, and I'll just play the D chord. And he's like, what's a D chord? And I'm like, you just did a Kirk Hammett solo. How do you not, so
it's true.
That's our jam sessions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going to ask, whose idea was it to stick the Giorgio Moroder Midnight Express theme in there? Because that was freaking awesome.
Oh, thank you. That was me.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
that was me. I'm glad you liked it. Thank you.
Okay, I lived in Turkey. I was actually stationed in Turkey. And that movie was actually blacklisted. We were specifically told to not watch the movie before, during, after it was okay, but before and during, like, you couldn't get a hold of that movie. And I didn't understand why. And then, of course, by the time I got to my next station, I watched the movie and I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad I was not aware of any of this while I lived there. So I had to go and, I had to play it, and I was listening to the music and I was just like, okay, this is totally setting the tone, because that's how you started it out. The story that you guys did. So, by the way, I'm really glad I didn't eat breakfast before I was reading it. So we're going to tap into the type of horror that this is, because this was so, I just had sound effects and colors, and I was just like, well, it's a good thing I'm just drinking my coffee while I'm reading this right now. Cause sometimes I like to read and eat, right? That's what people do these days. If it's not, if it's not a cereal box, it's, some horror. Who doesn't like some horror with your breakfast? And so I'm really glad I was not, eating while I was reading this, because, listeners, this is like so, it was so gross and graphic, but in like the best possible way. So thank you for the scenes that you guys, I love the setup. I love how you set it up with the intro character, Theo. So I love Theo. I'm just gonna say that right now. He can't help it. Let's just say that. And then of course Julianne. I mean, you got I love Julianne. So I don't want to give away any spoilers, but the setup. So whose idea was that opening scene with Theo, and then going into, we're gonna go full gross. So listeners, trigger warning, be damned. We're gonna deep dive into some nasty ass shit here.
Anthony, I think you should take this one.
Oh, I wrote that first chapter. Yeah, that was me. And so I said this on a different podcast too, but I want to repeat it. I'm really proud of that opening chapter. Cause I think what it really did well was what you're saying, kind of, it starts and then it ebbs into the more extreme gross out horror. But I am really proud of the kind of the transformation scene. So he puts the DVD in the player, and it kind of slowly, gradually becomes more and more less Theo and more the parasite. So yeah, that was me.
That was great. And so this is going to lead into the next question. So when you guys were writing this, did you meld together, not quite in the same way that the couch scene, but the melding of ideas? Did you guys have a whiteboard? Did you guys sit together and have a big whiteboard and just start throwing ideas on the whiteboard? Or did you kind of do the Stephen King, and I think it was in his Talisman, they sent sections, they mailed, obviously you didn't have to, you can email now, but they had to mail pages to each other. So how did you guys come up with this chapter by chapter idea?
Well, first I pitched Ryan 5 or 6 ideas that he was like, no, I don't want to do that one. No, I don't like that one. Until we finally hit on this one about people in a tenement house being experimented on. We've collaborated a few times, so I co-wrote Hissers 3 with him, which was his body horror apocalyptic trilogy. We co-wrote a Christmas movie together.
What? Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that.
A Hallmark movie, a legit Hallmark movie.
What?
That got some interest.
Yeah. So once we landed on the idea, Ryan and I we'll hang out one time and kind of outline on his little whiteboard that he has. And then we kind of just bounce back and forth. I'll write a chapter, I'll send it to Ryan, he'll look at it, write his own chapter, send it back to me. But it's not just like one chapter each. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 chapters, Ryan, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think we've allowed each other to each kind of go. So it'll be like, all right, this is your week. Get done what you get done. And then if he does a chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters, that's fine. And then it comes to me, and then I'll do a chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters, and it goes back to him. And we've got our little sort of whiteboard notes that we can look back on to, because sometimes it's, when you're doing a collaboration, it's kind of easy to get lost, especially if he throws in something that's really new and cool that I wasn't expecting. And then it's like, oh, I want to run with that, but it wasn't in the notes, but we're really good about just letting each other get done what we feel we have to get done until we hit our point of like, I'm done. Now it's Anthony's turn,
Very cool. How long did it take you guys to write this novella, approximately?
I don't remember. We did it, I think, kind of fast, but what, 6 months? Less than that?
Well, technically it was like a year and some change, but there were long stretches of time where we were both just doing other things. Like Ryan had recently broken his hip when we started writing this, right?
Yeah, it was around that time, I think so.
It was around that time. So I would say, yeah, cumulatively probably 6, 7 months, but it was longer.
When you, at the whiteboard, did you guys know what type of horror you wanted to write? Or did you even know you wanted to write horror? Like, how did you come up with this particular idea for this, like, I want to know details, like, I try to help the writers or help the readers and listeners understand the writing process. And so sometimes, you just have an idea and you're like, okay, well, an idea just isn't enough. So how did you guys, number one, come up with the idea for this particular body horror, like this transformer, like this is like, so all I keep thinking is just like drippy and like you can't even scoop anything. There's like nothing to even scoop.
That we actually had some sort of buzzwords when we started working on it, and I think like sleazy, slimy, goopy, drippy, gory was like all the words we would throw at each other. So Joe approached me from Crystal Lake. He emailed me and he said, "Hey, would you like to do a novella?" And as Anthony said, I was recovering from hip surgery and also hernia surgery right around the same time.
Were you playing hockey?
No, but I was on the ice. I slipped on the ice and I snapped the ball joint off the top of my femur.
Oh
really,
my God.
Really painful. I'm still kind of recovering. It's been almost 2 years now.
Oh, that's horror right there. Oh my God.
Yeah, I actually did a short story about that for Dan Hank's collection about an author who falls and breaks his hip in a field full of monsters. Anyway, so when Joe said, "Do you want to do this?" and I said yes, but I knew I was going to have a lot of trouble getting it done by myself because of the surgeries. So that's why I immediately was like, I got to get Anthony on board. And then I don't know if I feel like it was kind of what I wanted to do originally because of the previous books I've written, and I know a lot of my readers like it when it gets a little gross. And also I had been watching a lot of Joe Bob late at night during my recovery, and he had a lot of 80s trauma films and stuff. And I was like, well, I would love to do something sleazy. And Anthony is totally on board with that because he's like a big Hen and Lauder fan and stuff like that. So we immediately both agreed, like, yeah, let's just get like weird 80s Tromaville, goopy, slimy, sleazy fun with it and be kind of gratuitous and over the top. So I think it was, we were both on the same page pretty immediately.
That's awesome. Cause you never know what you're going to expect, right? So as a reader, we know, okay, it's going to be supposedly this type of horror, we think we're prepared. And like I said, I was not prepared at all for what transpired in this tale. And it was some of the scenes were just downright hilarious. Some of the lines of the characters, like just like you guys hit like just the right points at it, and it was just this thoroughly entertaining and disgusting. I've got nothing more to add to it than that. And on that note,
there's the book blurb right there. Entertaining and disgusting.
I feel like that should be the blurb for us, but I know listening to Cody, I know it's like the polar opposite. His story's like the polar opposite, I think, of ours. And I haven't read Ed's yet.
with Crystal Lake, we had talked about doing, and I thought about trying to have all of you guys on at one time, but I think that would be like way too hard to like moderate, especially because the stories are so different from my understanding, based off of the synopsis. And so, having just the two of you to focus on your story, because it seems like it is very different from the other stories, and especially because it is so entertaining and disgusting. And you did mention that there were certain things that you wanted to put in there. So I wanted to ask you, do you have favorite words that you like to insert into your stories? Is there a word that you can guarantee is going to be in every single one of your stories and or books?
I really kind of just write in the sense of whatever word works at that time is what I'm going to go with. I mean, other than obvious ones like blood,
Oh, yeah.
that's going to appear in every novel I write.
Cool,
But yeah,
cool
I don't
answer,
know.
dude. The answer for me is yes, but now that you've asked me this question, I cannot think of anything. Frenzied is one I find myself using a lot. What else? Come on, Ryan. What else do I use?
I don't know. I don't know that
Well,
I've ever noticed you
uh,
having like a recurring word.
That's a good
this,
question.
the scene that's coming to my mind was, and I don't think we're giving anything away by talking about, and I can also cut it out too. But the elevator scene where she's like pounding on that, right? I think it was her, Julianne,
Yeah.
and she's trying to, get the door to close. And there, of course, the word has escaped me now, but there was definitely a word, and I don't remember if it was like jackhammering or something like that. But at that moment, like it popped into my head. I was like, oh, I wonder if these guys like to use a particular word that, one of their favorite words throughout their writing process. But if you guys
Mhm.
can't think of it, then we'll just move on to another question.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
that would be a Ryan word because he wrote that scene. So,
I think I have used jackhammering in a few different books, to be honest with you. So yeah, I guess it's a recurring word that I don't know that I reuse, but there you go.
It's all good. So I wanted to ask you guys now in regard to, so it seems like there's so many different types of horror now, right? You have so many sub-genres of horror being the big umbrella. And so you have transformative, body horror, there's splatterpunk, extreme. Now, would you say that this is splatterpunk or extreme?
I I'm gonna put it in the splatterpunk category, even though there's a lot of extreme scenes in it, because I think we did try to have some sort of messages going on underneath everything, certainly with like body autonomy, um, some political commentary with, some of the militia guys that Anthony spearheaded all of that. So yeah, we've got some messages in there, but they're certainly not force fed.
For sure.
I think it's somewhere in between for me, because when I think splatterpunk, I think of like the original folks who spearheaded that, like Spectre and Skip and David Scow and all those guys. And I think that even though like a lot of that stuff is really gruesome, and I don't know if you guys have read The Scream, but there's some crazy over the top stuff at the end of The Scream, by Skip and Spectre. But I do feel like we kind of toe the line of both, because we get way grosser than I think that a lot of those earlier books do, with like a humorous tone versus kind of a very uncomfortable Hereditary-esque tone, I guess is the best way I could put it.
I love the humor. I think that's what really, kind of, for me, again, it was entertaining, as opposed to just being thoroughly just disgusting, was the entertaining aspect of it. And especially the sexual hilarity of it. Like I was just laughing out loud, with some of these scenes. And so it's like, it's disgusting, it's hilarious, it's entertaining. You feel so many different things at the same time, and you're literally reading these lines in a paragraph and you're just like, oh my God, these guys are like all over the place. Like, how did they even come up with these ideas? Like, seriously, all I kept thinking was, how And did you ever think to yourself, no, this is too much. Like I need to rein this in. I don't think the readers can handle this. Did either of you ever ask yourself, maybe we shouldn't write that?
I think the come for me scene that Ryan wrote when Ansel dies was the one scene in the book where I was like, maybe not. But that's just me.
That's totally the scene I was thinking. I was just like, oh my God.
I think I do like to push boundaries, but I also feel like I'm fairly conservative compared to a lot of, quote unquote extreme horror authors these days. So for me, as long as it's kind of like tongue in cheek almost, I'm okay to do it. I think if the intent behind it is really sort of just like hurtful, overly misogynistic, intently misogynistic or something like that, versus like, oh, this is just kind of supposed to be gross and funny and uncomfortable maybe, but like, there's a bit of humor to it, then I don't have a problem doing it. I've certainly read some extreme horror in the last couple of years that has made me feel not okay. Like this is just too much and shouldn't have been done. And I don't ever want to hit that point, but I feel like I'm okay kind of like taking a little step into a humorous, uncomfortable situation.
That's probably like the perfect answer for that. So how important is it for you to have a good work area or desk setup, or can you work anywhere?
I prefer to have like a big open desk. Like my desk here is fairly large. I keep my TBR pile over here in the corner, but I like if I have my choice, I like having space. I don't like clutter. I quite honestly, I despise clutter. It stresses me out. And then I start focusing on like, oh, I need to clean. I need to clean this before I write. And then I can't write. And then I clean. Then I'm like, well, I'm tired now. I don't feel like it. So for me, if I have a choice, that's my preference. That said, I have written stories. I was helping a friend move, and during break time, I was sitting in the middle of their like demolished apartment with boxes and everything, trying to finish a story. I've written on planes. I've written at the beach, at a coffee shop. And I can write anywhere if I have to, but my preference is a nice open space.
Nice. What about you, Ryan? What is your preferred work area?
Well, as you just saw, my daughter just interrupted me to fix her tablet, which again, I couldn't fix because I'm terrible with technology. So I just gave her my phone. So I prefer to write, if I'm home, it's late at night, the kids are in bed. I'm up with a glass of wine. Usually I've got a table set up in the family room right here with my computer. And that's usually where I will do most of my writing nowadays. Back in the day, I would sneak out of work for lunch and write inside my car. I was in a tour bus for many years playing music, and I would just go sit at the back of the bus and work on books and stories there or in hotel rooms. So nowadays I'd say the place where I'm best able to discipline myself is the table over here in the family room, which I've specifically made sort of like hard and uncomfortable. So I have to like stay awake. And because if I do it on the couch, I'll just fall asleep. So if I sit in the wooden chair at the table, then I can get a couple thousand words done a day. So
that's awesome. All right. So I wanted to ask you, do either of you have a favorite character from Monstrous Death? Like, is there one character that you think, gosh, I wish I was that guy or girl, or I hate that guy, but he's my favorite?
I mean, I like all of them, but if I got to pick one that I think was the most fun to write, well, it's a toss up between Theo and Ron for me. I think they were both super fun to work on. I might go with Ron just because he was so kind of pathetic at times that it was kind of fun to write him.
For sure. What about you, Anthony?
I tend to only write mostly problematic characters because they're the most fun and interesting to work on. Man, I think I probably, if I wanted to be somebody in the book, probably the character that's closest to me is the guy that consistently shit talks Ron on the walkie-talkie. That's
That
that's just
guy's funny.
me. So,
I
uh,
forgot about that guy. He's funny. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I love Julianne. I'm glad that you like Julianne. I'm glad that Ryan liked Julianne. She was a lot of fun to write. Ansel was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, Ansel's.
Um, Ron is just every middle manager I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. I wanted to kind of like, you look at Paul Reiser's character in, I can't, Alien, right?
Oh
Aliens.
yeah, yeah.
Ryan, back to me.
Aliens.
And I
Yeah.
kind of took that model of that character, but then thought like, well, what if he actually did stuff? Because Paul Reiser just bumbles around that whole movie, like being, stabbing everybody in the back. But I wanted to have a character that was similar, that was somewhat capable, while at the same time, maybe you can resonate a little bit with like why he is the way he is. He's trying to like help his family out. He's trying to help his sister out. So that was fun to write. Theo is fun to write because I think, everybody loves to write a character whose sole purpose is to just destroy things. So yeah, I had a good time with all of it.
That's awesome. So, in regard to the story, you guys had mentioned a couple of games or like gaming. So you mentioned LARPing and GTA. Now, are either of you into LARPing? Do you play GTA? Like, do you play video games?
I think we both play video games, and I have played plenty of GTA. Um, I don't LARP, but I know what it is. I've seen it.
I mean, I'm gonna be 38 this year, so I am kind of like that Grand Theft Auto 3 generation, so I grew up playing that game quite a bit. And then I don't LARP, but I do know people who do LARP. But I mean, I do love video games. I've played The Last of Us 2 like 3 or 4 times now, like all the way through, because the game is just so like beautifully designed and the gameplay is fantastic.
So you
So
guys will. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like now that they revamped Cyberpunk 2077, that game is pretty enjoyable, but that's all.
Right on. You guys will probably appreciate this. So I was 49 when I got my first PlayStation 4. Yeah. I had
Wow.
I played Atari, what was it, 1800 when it first came out?
Hmm.
Like my parents got Atari, so we had like the original joystick and we had the original paddle. So that was me playing video games as a child and then literally never playing video games literally the rest of my life. And then finally at 49, retired, bought a PlayStation 4, and I debated getting PlayStation 5 because PlayStation 5 was supposed to be coming out, and I was like, but I want it now. And so I got PlayStation 4, and so I got GTA, the one that takes place in LA, because I'm from Southern California. And so, I believe it's 5, GTA 5. I am world's worst GTA player because all I do is just steal cars and drive.
Yeah.
I don't do any shooting. I don't do any dealing. I don't play the game at all. I literally jump on buses and just drive and steal the food trucks. And I
Yep.
just have a blast. I literally just laugh and just drive cars. That's all I do.
I mean,
Worst video player.
that could be zen. That could be super zen though. Like sometimes I'll just drive around in 2077. I'm just like, I'm driving around. That's it. This is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm ready to go to bed, but I'm driving. So, I mean, I think that could be fun.
My
I feel that.
my son is 10, and he's only now segueing into like more adult games. So he's allowed to play. We have the Switch, and it's GTA 4 or something like that, or San Andreas. Is that it? I forget.
Yeah.
So he's not allowed to do the missions because they're a little too adult still, but he'll just get on and I say, you can drive the cars, and he'll just run around and steal the cars and flip them over and it's very zen. I'd sit there and watch him just do crazy stunts and try and jump over rivers, and he loves it. So I totally get it.
Totally. And for me, it's nostalgic because I grew up going to the Whiskey A Go-Go. Like that's what I did as a teenager. Like we spent our times on Sunset Strip. So when
Yeah.
my cousin told me that GTA had, of course, they don't call it Whiskey A Go-Go in the game. And so I just literally just drive past the whiskey all the time and just like, fly your hand out, fly your hand out. So, yeah, so that's what I do with my GTA time. Now,
Love that.
do you guys have a preferred beverage when you're writing? So do you drink coffee, tea, Red Bulls, beer, wine? I know, Ryan, you had mentioned wine. So, but do you,
Uh, yeah, I'm the wine writer. I find it works when I'm playing music on stage too. Just having that one drink kind of just makes me not worry too much about what I'm doing. And I think it really helps me just get words on a page. They're not gonna be great words, but they're on the page now. And I'm not in my head so much about like, do I use this word, or do I have this sentence here, break here, whatever. It's just like, doesn't matter if I have a glass of wine. It's just like, get it on the page and we'll worry about it later. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's usually my job to worry about it when I get the wine draft back, and I'm like, what? What? Then I gotta voice chat Ryan, and we
yeah.
need to work some stuff out. So
I'm drinking coffee right now, by the way, in case you want iced coffee.
I'm
Nice.
I'm the other end of that spectrum. So I'm the coffee writer. And then when I'm done with that, I'll move on to energy drinks, which I'm sure my liver is like, please, for the love of God, stop. My same thing with my pancreas, but uh, I find that it's hard for me to write with any type of alcohol. So Ryan knows I don't really drink anymore. Mostly just because I get tired, and then I want to fall asleep, and it becomes a whole thing, and then I got nothing done. I just sat at my computer drunk. It sucks. So yeah, I tend to do coffee or energy drinks, or if I'm like, maybe my heart can't sustain any more milligrams of caffeine, I'll drink like, non-caffeinated tea to keep me awake. What would help more is having a place up here where Ryan and I live in North County, that's open past, 6 p.m.
So in your guys' writing process, do you wake up in the day and say, okay, I need to wake up, I need to write 1,000 words today? Like, what is your writing process? Like, how do you go about writing? Like, do you actively plan on sitting down and writing a certain amount of words, or do you just think to yourself, you know what, I'm just gonna write and whatever happens, happens? How are you, like a write by the seat of your pants type of guy, or do you have a plan?
My plan, so during the school year when my kids are in school, Monday through Friday, I set aside 2 hours every day, usually from like noon to 2. My kids get out at 3, so I got to go get them and all that stuff. And then I have a goal of 1 to 2,000 words. If I hit 1,000, okay, at least I made that goal for the day. I try to get to 2,000. I usually fall somewhere in between 1,500, 1,600 on a good day. And I really force myself to do that every single work day when they are in school. Now that they're home for the summer, writing has been a challenge. So now I'm back to like waiting for them to go to bed at night, but then it depends on how exhausted I am from, having kids all day.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What about you, Anthony? What is your writing process?
Well, it's messy. It's messy and terrible, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. So I try to have a goal of like 1,000 words a day, but sometimes I get 500, sometimes I get 1,500, and it's funny, the older I've gotten, I used to be able to write well into the evening. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, I can do it. I primarily write better in the morning now, so I need to get my words done before 3 p.m. or it's not happening unless it's the weekend. So I try to write on my breaks at work. I try to get up early and write before I have to actually get up and go to like get ready and go to work. And then, sometimes I do these like sprints where I've gotten like 3,000 words on a Friday night or a Saturday, and then I won't write for 3 days, and then I'll write another however many words or pages for consecutive days, like 3 days in a row. And then like back to not doing it for 2. Like I said, very messy. very messy. It's better if I'm writing with Ryan, or like if I have an obligation. So if somebody's asked me for a story, I'm fairly good about saying suck it up and write in the evening. Left to my own devices, we're just gonna be here for a real long time. So
I love
Yeah, I
it.
think
Oh, go ahead. Please,
I
Ryan.
was going to say, I think the difference between me and Anthony is Anthony has a day job. Um, my day job is my kids. So I treat my writing like my day job, because otherwise I would just play GTA. And then I would feel really bad about myself and feel useless, if I go the whole week and I didn't do anything. So my writing becomes sort of my day job. Like every day I got to sit down and do this, where, Anthony's got to actually go to work, so I can understand the chaotic schedule.
yeah.
That makes sense. And then final question. Have you ever written anything that was just so crappy, so shitty that you were like, what the hell was I thinking? And there is absolutely no way I'm ever going to let anyone read this ever.
Yes. How many novels have I written? 14? I would say 14 of them. I feel like that.
You made
Uh,
the joke before I made the joke about
yeah,
my stuff.
that's the
Go
writer.
ahead.
Everything
Oh,
sucks. Why did I write this?
self-deprecating.
It sucks. It's terrible. Don't let anybody read it.
Self-deprecation.
Um, I do have, there's one story I wrote that I got published years ago. It was in a anthology that Permuted Press had put out before they um, got bought by the Simon and Schuster guys or whatever. And it's a terrible story. I can't believe they took it. And I think I've republished everything that I've sold at this point in the anthology or collections I've put out. That one will never see the light of day again because it's just embarrassingly bad.
What about you, Anthony? Do you have something like embarrassingly bad?
I think any of my early short stories from college are pretty terrible. There are scenes in my first novella that I reread and I'm like, why was this the choice? And I think part of it was, uh, we had, you know, I had 8 weeks to write it. So, like, God, there's just so many, like, towards the end of that book, there's like a lot of random scenes happening. I'm just like, I remember, what am I even doing here? Like, what? I just, and then there's like, I can't think of anything too bad that I've written that I'm like, man, unfortunately, everybody has seen those terrible scenes that I've put out in the world.
For both of you guys, I know that that was the final question, but this is part two of that because this is part of the learning process. Like as a writer, part of what we do is we learn from our mistakes, we learn from our writing. And as far as something that is so crappy, when you put it out there, you think to yourself like, okay, I've learned from this experience. Like it's as crappy as that was, and for you, Ryan, for as hard as that was to accept that, but would you say that that is helping you, or that has helped you become a better writer, knowing that is out there, that you can't get it anymore, that it's and that you've learned from that awful experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It helped me start really thinking hard about what I want to write, um, and that I shouldn't just write something uh, to have something. It should be something that's good and make sense and not be embarrassing. Yeah, I've learned a lot, even from ones that are still out there, still published, that I sort of cringe when I think about now. Every misstep in a short story or a novel or whatever is a learning lesson to not do it that way again, and think harder about it, try it a different way, and ultimately you just you're always, with any craft, whether it's writing, music, painting, whatever, you should always just kind of try to be getting better and better and better and better, and looking back down at the mistake and going, well, that was a step that got me here, So I appreciate the mistakes. I hope people don't go back and find them. But yeah, they certainly have led to me getting a little better, I hope, at the craft.
Awesome. Anthony, do you have any final notes regarding like these learning processes as far as like writing
I
goes?
I think it's important to be patient with yourself while you're writing, and it's also really important to reread what you are working on and not just write it and then kind of set it and forget it. At least that hasn't helped me. I like to reread like whatever I'm working on. If I like walk away, come back, I read the chapter before the chapter I'm currently working on because I need to figure out like sometimes I'm forgetful and I don't really know what's happening. But I think patience is important. I think allowing yourself to suck in a first draft has been really valuable for me because I've spent so much time agonizing over a first draft instead of just getting it out there and then going back and looking at it. And this is kind of me going off on a tangent now, but uh revision is so important, and oftentimes you'll find yourself unlocking things that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise rereading what you've written. I had ideas for this novella we're here to talk about today 2 weeks ago, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
Why didn't we do that? But yeah, just to be patient with yourself, and like Ryan said, you should always be like on a upward trajectory of learning the craft and not assuming that you're great all the time, like right out the gate. And we all have, things to learn. And Ryan sends me pictures every once in a while of he revisits old books and he's like, look at all these typos I found. So
That's
no one's immune to it.
I was that's humbling, right? So you would say that that's humbling. That's like you said, that's something that you learn from. And, maybe it's, what something of youth. There's when we're younger, we feel like we're invincible, right? And especially in our 20s, we think, oh my God, this is great. I'm so great. Let me tell the world how great I am. Like, oh my God, these words, like, how is it that nobody else has, thought about these words, right? And then as we get older, 30, we're like, oh, what the hell? What? No. And then, 40s, you guys are younger than me, so I'm going to keep going into the numbers. 40s and then 50s. And then I'm like, okay, so it's not so much quantity, it's quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And you only get to that quality by taking the time to work on your stuff.
And that goes back to the patience that you were saying. So I really like what you were saying about agonizing over that rough draft. Because I've got this story here that I'm working and I'm attempting, and I'm like, I think it's great. I think the idea is great. So I'm like, maybe I should slow down a little bit and revisit that chapter before. So thank you for your advice, gentlemen. Thank you.
No
problem.
Everything I learned from Ryan. So.
And I'm still learning from Anthony. So.
I love it. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for your time. My tagline for the show is go forth and be magical, but I do know that there is a delay. So I was wondering if, Anthony, if you could go ahead and say it first, and then Ryan, go ahead and say it after him.
Go forth and be magical.
Go forth and be magical.